is TalkSport Extra Time. Thanks very much to Annie Goldstein and Jason Cunley for the Sports Bar. They'll be back, of course, at 11 o'clock tonight. Right now, though, it's time for the two mics once more, and a very warm welcome, I have to say, to Mr. Mike Parry, who I haven't seen since, yesterday? Or day before?
I haven't seen each other since yesterday, Mike, or the day before, but the more often we get together, the more we understand each other, you know what I mean?
Very true.
And you think I have a misunderstanding about your lifestyle. That's because it's very erratic, and you've had so many displaced relationships, and that's affected your ability to act as a proper father to your children, all that kind of stuff.
In your opinion, yeah.
Well, well, it's not just my opinion. That would be in the opinion of most psychologists and people who study the nature of human beings. But one of them I want to ask you about, Mike, because it's just become relevant tonight, is the relationships with your father's plural-in-law.
Oh, yeah.
Because, of course, Luis Suarez is now being spoken for by his father-in-law. Luis Suarez is ready to walk out on Liverpool and head for Spain. Suarez's father-in-law, Gustavo Balbi. Something wrong with this.
What's wrong with your chair?
It's not my chair. It's my headphones again. They're going all in and out. And I hear you, and then I don't hear you. I don't know what's going on. Somebody sabotaged it.
So these are your new headphones, aren't they?
Yeah, they're my new
ones.
ones.
The ones that we wrestled out of that big plastic package for you.
I don't understand this.
Don't worry about it.
Well, I know, but it's annoying me like mad.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, you don't really need headphones, do you?
I just paid £200 for these. Right, anyway, sorry. Luis Suarez is ready to walk out on Liverpool and head for Spain. Suarez's father-in-law, Gustavo Balbi, right? That's a strange name, Gustavo Balbi.
Why is it strange?
Well, it's...
Is he Spanish?
Well, I suppose so. I was going to say, not too many people
well,
I know.
Mike Parry's a strange name for living in Spain.
I suppose it is. Anyway, yesterday claimed the hitman, sounds like he's working for the mafia, would be happy to sign for either Real Madrid or Barcelona. The bombshell, it's a bombshell, came just hours before Suarez, and I got turned inside, you see, because I can't see through pages, launched another attack on his treatment in England. Balbi, speaking to Spanish TV. It's not very good Spanish TV, is it?
I don't know. Well, I've only seen it when I've been in Spain.
Yeah, I know. I think it's pretty average.
Is it?
Yeah, it's all a bit
Spanish.
piecemeal. Well, it's all in Spanish, but it's all a bit piecemeal. Balbi, speaking to Spanish TV, insisted Louis has nothing left to prove in England. It would be...
French accent, that.
Sorry, OK. I'll read it in perfect English. It would be the right time to move to Spain. It doesn't matter whether it's one team or the other, but Louis will not go to another team in England out of respect to Liverpool. So, that's his father-in-law speaking for him.
Well, we know he's definitely not going to Arsenal, and we definitely know that he wants to stay at Liverpool, because that's what he said before. But for a lot of footballers have got this problem, haven't they? Either their own father or their father-in-law sort of sticks the oar in and says something which is slightly embarrassing.
Well, like all sports stars, Lewis Hamilton is probably the best example of somebody who had to sort of deal with the father problem.
Right.
But what about your relationships with your
Why do you want to know about my relationships?
Well, because...
How is that relevant to Luis Suarez going to Real Madrid?
Well, I think it's extremely relevant to talk about the relationship between you and your father-in-law, because your relationship with your previous wives have been disastrous.
Well, I've only had one wife, I always tell you, so technically I've only ever had one father-in-law.
Sorry, how many families of children have you got?
I've got two.
Well,
I've got one family. All my children are part of my family.
Oh, I see. So you are failing to recognise the mother of your next two children as your partner or wife?
Well, she doesn't want to marry me. Well, can't really blame her for that.
Do you live in the same house?
Occasionally.
Occasionally, I see. This is a dilettantic attitude, isn't it? Which drives me mad. Your sense of responsibility is completely off the Richter scale. Tell me about
any of this got to do with you?
It's got everything to do with me. If I'm working with you in a closed environment like a studio, I expect some sort of moral stance to exist between the two of us. But your alley cat type, your alley cat type.
Rubbish. All right, well, I'll tell you a story about my father-in-law. Right?
Yeah, I'd like to hear.
My only wife that I've ever had.
I bet you this is not a good story.
Well, it's not a particularly bad story, but I mean, they were very old-fashioned. Her parents, they lived in America. He had come through.
Sorry, your definition of old-fashioned is somebody who expects the son-in-law to be loyal to their daughter and not go around having affairs with other women.
Not so much. I mean, for example, when I first went to meet them over in America, they wouldn't let us sleep in the same bed in their house, because we weren't married at that point. Which for me was a bit of a surprise, because my parents didn't mind. My parents didn't care about that.
No, my parents were very, very strict about that. Nobody who slept under their roof slept in intimacy. Yeah,
including them, presumably.
Well, I don't know about them. I'm not talking about my parents. I'm talking about, when they're, if I brought a girl home or one of my sisters brought a boy home, it was separate bedrooms, because that's the way we did it when we were brought up properly. And
that's what I mean by it's quite old-fashioned, isn't it?
Yeah, it is quite old-fashioned, but it's quite good as well. Gave me a moral compass, which you
have not got a moral compass.
You never inherited a moral compass.
You just told us on Saturday night about how you basically sold out to give free information to the British Embassy in Washington in exchange for a ride around a nice Rolls-Royce and a few glasses Master Pinot Grigio.
No.
So don't give me anything about your moral compass.
Sorry, that
But
was
let me tell you the story.
patriotism. Yeah, I'd like to
Well,
hear
let me
about
tell you
this
the story,
father-in-law.
because what happened was when I went to meet them for the first time, I basically went to America to stay there for a couple of months. I got a job there, did a bit of work, and it got introduced to them. And so the father, being a very traditional
And which town
father,
are we in now?
this was in a place called Brookfield, Connecticut, which is
Right.
about an
I
hour and
know.
a half outside
Yeah,
of New York,
I
near
know.
Danbury. And he said, and because it was kind of very formal, we had the kind of family dinner. The next morning, he said, "I'd like to take you. I'd like to take you out and have a talk to you about your intentions regarding my daughter." And I said, "Absolutely fine, no problem at all." He said, "I've got to go to work tomorrow morning." He said, "Why don't we have breakfast and then we'll head off in my car?" Because he was a sort of travelling salesman of some industrial rubber company or something like that.
Right.
And I said, "Fine."
Industrial rubber, so do you mean tyres?
No, it was more like sort of piping. In fact, his company was responsible, I think, for putting all the piping along the I-95, the New Jersey Turnpike. And all
Right,
that.
okay.
So it was that kind of, industrial rubber.
Yeah.
And he said, "I'll be up at 5 o'clock." I went, "Pardon?" Because, Americans get up really early. He was up at 5 o'clock in the morning, every
Right.
morning, making breakfast. So
Right.
I was awoken from the couch that I was sleeping on at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Sleeping on a couch?
I had to sleep on a couch.
Well, you go and see your parents-in-law, they put you on a couch.
Yeah, because I wasn't allowed to sleep with their daughter, and they didn't have another bedroom to put me in.
What sort of a hovel were they living in?
It was a very nice house, actually, but I think it only had a couple of bedrooms.
Oh,
And I was
right,
given
yeah.
this kind of study room, which was basically a couch. Anyway, so we got in the car, and it was a good hour and a half's drive to New Jersey, to the headquarters of this company that he worked for. And, we were having a very genial chat, and he was asking me about what I planned to do with my life. And, I didn't say...
Provide for his
I
daughter.
planned to spend it, having affairs with as many women as possible and drinking as much as I possibly
Which is
can.
the way it turned out.
Yeah, but I didn't say that, obviously, at the
And
time.
lying on the roof of your apartment in New York, throwing eggs on people passing below.
I was obviously a very good prospect. Being English, they thought that I was very well-to-do, which wasn't a bad thing either. I didn't tell them I had mad Scottish parents or anything like that. Anyway, so we were doing very well, and we got to the headquarters, which was somewhere near Hoboken in New Jersey.
Hoboken, New Jersey.
And he said, I'm just going to park up here. I'm just going to go into the office and pick up a couple of things. I'll only be about 10 minutes. I'll be right back.
Why was he taking you to his place of work? To impress you or impress them, or what?
I think he'd been told to pop in or something like that. In retrospect, when I tell you what happened.
Yeah, but why was he taking you? That's what I don't understand.
Well, because he wanted to have me on my own in the car to talk.
Oh, I
to
see.
me
Right,
about my intentions.
Okay, to tell you
towards
about
his
the
daughter.
birds and the bees and all
Well,
that.
no, just to ask if my intentions were honourable,
Right.
basically.
Right.
Which of course they were.
No, they weren't.
Well, I told him I wanted to marry his daughter.
Yeah, but your intentions were never honourable.
Which I then did.
You've never been faithful to one woman in your
Well,
life, and you
that's
weren't
not-
faithful to this one
Well,
we're
that's none of
talking
your
about.
business.
Even
That is
when,
none of your business.
Even when the two of you were going out in Bath while you were a student.
That's none of your business.
You cheated on her then, didn't you?
No, I didn't. No, rubbish.
No,
Not really. Not really. Anyway, listen. So he goes in, right, to the office.
Not really. Let's
goes
mark
in.
that one. Not.
He goes-
Not. I'm sorry. I'm just. Mate, I just want to.
What are you waving at?
Not really. I've just written that down. Yeah, go on then.
Anyway, he goes in. He comes out about 10 minutes later, looking slightly ashen-faced.
Out of this big building.
Out of this massive, well, it's like a warehouse
Right,
type
yeah.
building, and it's trucks everywhere. We're sitting there in this Cutlass Supreme car.
And he's looking a bit ashen
He's
faced.
looking a bit ashen
Why
faced.
is
And
that
he got
then?
in the car, and I said, he didn't say anything, right? And I said, "You okay?"
How's it
and he
going?
went, "I've just been fired."
You know what happened?
And he'd been working for them for about 15 years, right?
I reckon this boss must have been standing in the office, saw him drive up in the company car. So, who's that jerk in the passenger seat? And when he's gone in and said, "What are you doing driving jerks around in a company car for?" They had a row and they sacked him because of you.
I don't think it was because of me.
I bet
but
it
of course,
was.
in those days, there were no mobile phones or anything, so we had a very, very long trip back to Connecticut, which took similarly an hour. I mean, fortunately, I didn't take his car off him, otherwise I don't know what we would have done. So he drove the car
Hand
back.
the car in the parking lot.
Yeah.
That's very American,
I
actually,
know.
isn't it? Yeah.
Just leave the keys at the door, and you'll have to make your own way out.
Exactly, make your way home. Yeah,
Yeah, going to give you like a week's notice or something. So anyway, we drove back practically in silence all the way home. And
So this talk about, how you're going to provide for my daughter could have turned around by you saying, "Forget about that, pal. Are you going to provide for your wife?"
yeah, exactly. And then we got back to the house, and of course all hell broke loose then, because his wife was a bit neurotic anyway at the time.
Yeah.
He then goes, and so I sort of got out of the car and thought, I'll just make myself scarce. And I
And
went
this is
and
the
sat in
very,
the
very
garden.
first meeting with your
Yeah.
your future
This is the day after I'd
parents-in-law.
arrived there,
Yeah.
And so he turns up,
Yeah.
and oh, yeah, that's right. I think her sister was staying as well, who was pregnant. That was why I had to sleep on a couch.
Yeah.
And so he goes into the kitchen, announces that he's been fired.
Well, gets a knife out the bread
And
drawer.
then just the whole house just bursts into this kind of manic kind of, wailing, screaming.
and
what are we going to do?
retribution, and whose fault is it?
And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, this is unbelievable.
It's all your
this
fault.
is really bad news.
Where
you
was
know.
your potential bride?
I don't know where she was, actually.
I mean, was she there?
I think she might have been working. She had a job as a waitress or something at some point. So she wasn't actually there. Yeah. But it was a very traumatic beginning to my sort of relationship with my father-in-law.
Yeah.
And I never really became very close to him after that.
Well, I'm not surprised. You know, when eventually your horrendous behaviour to your first wife in terms of affairs with, a number of other women came out.
Banging on about
well,
this.
I'm sorry.
You're the only person that's ever done anything like that.
It's the moral compass situation. Did you never get the threatening phone call from your wife's father saying he's going to come and sort you out?
No, because he died by then.
Oh, I see, right. Yeah.
So, but thanks for pointing that out.
That's right, yeah. Sorry about that.
Something
Not
else
that I'm
you
laughing
can
at the poor chap
Yeah, of course
dying.
you are, yeah.
But
you've got history of abusing my father and giving me a hard time about him.
Probably the stress that
even
you
though
heaped
he died.
on his life
I think it genuinely was an incredibly stressful day for him because, people didn't get fired that much in those days. But it was, I literally didn't know. Can you imagine? An hour and a half in a car with a guy who's just been fired for the job he's had for 20 years.
Yeah, and had no inkling.
I didn't really know him.
And had no inkling it was going to happen.
No.
Oh, that's terrible.
Shocking.
God,
Shocking.
I mean, talk about the angel of death.
I know.
That's you.
I know. Well, we might hear some of your father-in-law stories. Oh, no, you haven't been married, have you? Isn't that amusing?
I've got
Mike
father-in-law
Porky
stories.
Parry and myself, Mike Graham, will be back next. TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Gray. Mike Parry is here with me. I'm hoping now that that's the end of your kind of excoriation of my personal life because, I'm not here to tell you stories about my private life. You don't like telling stories about your private life.
I don't mind telling stories about my
private life. You tell lies
life.
about your private life.
I don't tell lies. What lies do I tell? How dare you say that?
I'm incapable of telling a lie.
What lies have I ever told?
Well, because you never know because you contradict yourself so often.
When did I last contradict myself?
Do you know what you said the other night when you were here and we were talking about people taking their mates down the pub and drinking and then getting in the car?
Right.
And you said that your father, and I know it was probably a slip of the tongue, you said your father only took friends for a drink or only really had a drink with friends who he met who were the parents of his children. Which I presume you didn't mean.
No, I meant the parents of schoolmates of mine. That's what I meant. Right. And you should have worked that out because you're supposed to have an analytical brain.
Well, I didn't think about it at the time. It was only later when somebody tweeted it on Twitter and said, what on earth is Parry talking about?
Yeah, OK. Well, other people a bit more intelligent than you could have worked that out. The only reason that I do think that we should share some stories about your private life with our listeners is that I sometimes get the reputation that, I'm perhaps, not as nice and cuddly as I'd like to be and that I've got some dark secrets in the past, right? Whereas, in fact, you're the guy who's had the moral behaviour of an alley cat for most of your life, but you try to come over as though you're respectable. And,
well, I'm respectable.
I mean, for instance, you just had a go at me then and said, we'll hear some tales about your father's-in-law. Oh, no, you've never got married. Yeah. Like as though I'm some sort of, villain for having not got married.
No, just weirdo. Not a villain. Weird.
So I see. So one of your criticisms of me is that I didn't get married in order that I could divorce a woman, leave 2 children heartbroken, go bankrupt in the process, then go and attach myself to a number of other women, then have 2 more children with other women, then maybe abandon them to go back to America to look at my first children. So I'm sorry that I haven't done any of that. I'm sorry I haven't shattered people's lives all over the globe, but I just decided...
Well, you have, actually. Because you've fired loads of people who have become very miserable as a result. And not been able to find work again and had nervous breakdowns.
I got near to being married once, and I tell you what, it was a lovely lady, and they were a Jewish family, and I'm Gentile. And it caused a huge problem, really. And a very serious story, this, and her parents,
Well, I'm sure a lot of people have got similar stories. Actually, we would like to hear from some people with some father-in-law stories.
Please
08717 223344. Tell us about how it went, because Luis Suarez's father-in-law is all over the papers this morning saying he should move to Real Madrid. You can text us on 81089, email us via the website, talksport.com, and on social media, they can find you at Mike Parry 8.
That's right,
at IROMG and at TS Extra Time. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
I'm just going to repeat that number for you because old MG here gobbles it out so fast you can't possibly pick it up. So I'll just give it you again. It's 08717 223344. Say that slowly so that you can remember it and write it down if you want, because we'd love to hear from you.
When's your carer turning up?
See, again, abuse, that's all I get from you. Anyway, the point is, this is a very serious story. They were a very wealthy family. They were a Jewish family. I'm a Gentile. Parents disapproved of it from the start.
Of course.
Didn't like it. Eventually, it fell down on the idea. Now, this is quite interesting, actually. would I convert to Judaism?
Right.
But did you know that Judaism is, in fact, one of the few religions in the world that doesn't actively go and seek converts? What most other religions do. You know, I mean, people tried sometimes to draw you into their religion.
My parents were living in Scotland at the time.
Yep.
My father was a Protestant, my mother was a Catholic. That was considered to be a mixed marriage in Scotland.
Yeah, it certainly was. Yeah. Anyway, the point of the story is it all fell down on that because it wasn't so much that I had any objection to converting to Judaism, which
What's wrong with your eye?
I've got what do they call it? Middle-aged hay fever. And
Middle-aged hay fever.
Yeah.
How is that different from other people's hay fever?
Sorry. No, it's true. I have honestly.
You've got middle-aged hay fever.
No, it's a phenomenon.
How is it different?
It's a phenomenon.
I used to have hay fever as a child. Was that children's hay fever?
I've had no hay fever all my life, but I tell you what happens. What happens is it's a new phenomenon because of the way the world works now. There's loads of chemicals in the air and all this kind of stuff.
No, there are actually fewer chemicals in the air now than there were.
People get to my age now, which is a sort of, just beyond 50 and that sort of stuff, and all of a sudden...
Just beyond 50?
Yeah, all of a sudden you get this hay fever problem. And let me finish the story about the potential father-in-law. Anyway, it wasn't so much that... it was conversion. I a lot of great things about Judaism, which I have
Would you
no
have been
problem
willing
with.
to change your religion? Then,
I may have been.
So what did you say when he asked you?
Well, I said I'll think about it. But he didn't want me to say. He didn't want me to say that. He wanted me to say definitely no, and then they could have cast me out of the temple. So
well,
to
they
speak.
probably had other reasons for not wanting you as a son-in-law. I can imagine.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, I'm not going to follow that one up. I'm going to follow that one. But actually, I'll tell you what the stumbling block was. I was a very ambitious young journalist and turned out to be a very successful one, as you know, far more successful than you ever were in newspapers.
Up to a point, Lord Copper.
And then, of course, moved into the communications industry, audio-wise, like you did.
Also, you went and worked for the FA, just like Ian Danton did.
That's a bit harsh.
We must talk about
That is very harsh.
We must talk about Ian Danton later.
No, come on. My old mate
He's doing a great job out there for the FA.
No. Come on, mate. Come on. Now, let me just finish the story about the Jewish family.
Go on.
The breaking point was, the father said, well, even if we could accept that and you did come and, join our religion, join our family, you'd have to give up your career and come and work for me. They owned a multinational company which produced woods and laminates and all this kind of stuff, okay? Right. And I said, well, that's impossible. I'm not doing that because I'll be a kept man.
Yeah.
And he said, no. We don't describe them as kept men in our communities. Yeah. We are family business.
And you run a family business. Well, that's fair enough.
And you got to join the family business.
You might have been more successful at that because you couldn't have been fired.
Yeah, but the girl I was going out was already a multi-millionairess through the trust fund she had. So I didn't want to be a kept man. I wasn't going to give my life over to being...
But that's because you're psychologically incapable of being with a woman who makes more money than you.
Well, I don't like it. I mean, that certainly unnerves me.
You don't think that's weird?
No, I don't. I think that's fairly normal. I think any bloke.
You don't think it's sexist?
I think any bloke who thinks that I think I'll live off a rich woman is a weirdo himself, because it's against caveman instincts. And if you lose your caveman instincts, you become something else, and whatever else that is, that's weirdo.
Yeah, a modern man. Yeah. You don't suffer from middle-aged hay fever either.
Well, no, I'm telling you, and it's got to the point now where I'm rubbing my eyes and I start sneezing and all this kind of stuff, and it's becoming a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, but it's called hay fever.
Yeah, but I'm not used to it. I didn't know what it was.
And also the pollen count at the moment is so high that you will get more hay fever now than you've ever had before. Yeah.
Why am I getting hay fever in this office? I mean,
maybe you're allergic to something else. Maybe it's new headphones.
Listen, there's no blinking flowers in this studio.
There shouldn't be any pollen in here.
There's no bees buzzing around. That's what I mean. And yet, since I've come in here, I've got it worse than I've had it all day.
Well, maybe it's something else.
I don't know what's going on.
Well, maybe we should get people to tell us their stories of being kept as well, being with somebody who actually made more money than them as well.
Well, I'll give them the number.
Go on, give them the number. Try and give it like in a normal voice.
08717223344. See, the way you read it out...
223344 is the way that most normal people say it.
But the way you read it out... do you know what really annoys me, Mike, honestly?
I don't know.
Absolutely
what really
annoys
you?
It's when you get a message on your phone and somebody's left you a message and it's somebody, say, from, my property leasing company or something like that, and they come on and they say, oh, hello, Mr. Parry, could you give me a ring back on 01233... Bang, and they put the phone down.
Yeah.
And I have to listen to that message.
Why don't you replay it then?
I do 3 times.
Why don't you just do what it tells you to do, which is if you hit this button, you can recall the number?
Because I'll tell you why, that only works if they're ringing from a mobile. If they're ringing from an office, it's gone through a switchboard in the office, and all you get when you ring back is some switchboard person, and you say, and I couldn't even make out their name, they said it so fast, I don't know who it is, I don't know what extension number they're on, and it's a nightmare.
Have you fixed your email, by the way, since the other night?
Yeah, I have fixed it, yeah.
Oh, good. How did you manage that then?
I gave it to one of the lads. He pressed a button which showed 2 circular arrows, right? and they went round a few times, and bing, all of a sudden my emails came back. So it was great. So I didn't really lose them in the end.
Don't you feel completely inadequate in the modern world?
No, I don't feel completely inadequate. I feel completely inadequate when I'm sitting in a studio here trying to get some sense into your skull and finding out that I can't penetrate it. And actually, that does make me feel a bit inadequate, Mike, because I think one of the challenges in life is to produce a great show with the meeting of two minds. The problem with your mind is I never know where it is, so it's very difficult to meet it. Usually, it's thinking about doing something disreputable and disgraceful in your private life.
Is it? Have you finished now?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to talk about some football coming up next. 08717 22 3344. Roy Hodgson.
Who's Roy
has
Hodgson?
finally picked a team that people should have said that he would have picked for the first game. And we're going to talk about that coming up next on TalkSport.
The FIFA World Cup on Talk Sport with Jewson. Our extensive fleet delivers direct to you, supplying everything for the trade. A Jewson lot more.
Oh, no. Oh, here's Suarez at the other end. 2 on the Uruguay. And England's good work has been completely undone. What are you doing, England? What are you doing? Great ball. Oh, Ruiz. It's hit the underside of the bar. Definitely a goal there. Ruiz has scored. And England have been eliminated from the 2014 World Cup.
We're disappointed, of course, for ourselves because we so much wanted to do better. We're disappointed for the fans who've come out here.
There is talk that Frank Lampard looks like he may well captain England against Costa Rica. Is that really the way forward?
You know, it could be Frank's last game. Maybe he hangs his international career, he calls it a day.
There shouldn't be any sentiment. I mean, we should want to go out with a bang.
James Milner, Jack Wilshere, Ross Barkley and Adam Lallana playing in behind Daniel Sturridge.
I'm handing them a great opportunity to go out on this fantastic stage and show that they're not only players with potential, they're players who are already good enough. I believe fully they will not let me or the team down.
Dear, oh dear, oh dear. It's Mike Graham and Mike Parry here, the two Mikes. I mean, you have to say, Roy Hodgson and his platitudes, I'm pretty tired of him. I've been hearing him now for a couple of years. Well, and, you know, he was given a chance in the Euros and he did probably better than people thought he would, considering he'd only taken over the team like a couple of months before. But, you know, it's just not been good enough. It's not been exciting enough.
I totally agree.
He's picked the wrong players. And for him to talk about, as he does on the back page of the Mail this morning, that it could be a 6-year project before England are any good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just hopeless, isn't it?
There's another line here, Mike, which I picked up on. When that game's over tomorrow night, Costa Rica, the whole of the entourage comes home. And, you know, I'm reading one or two comment pieces here making the point that because we were so hopeless in this competition, might it not have been a good idea for some of them to stay behind and have a look at some of the world's best players in this World Cup tournament and some of the world's best coaches and try and pick up something to find out where we went wrong? Wouldn't that have been a better idea?
That would have been a better idea because I was listening to somebody on TalkSport a little bit earlier on talking about how, you know, one of the callers said, you know, the problem with Hodgson, we see all these other countries like Costa Rica, like Mexico, like Algeria, for example, like America with Jurgen Klinsmann. They've all got coaches who are animated, who seem very, very enthused by what they're seeing and what they're not seeing, things that they want to do.
Think Hodgson's too old?
I think, one, he's too old. I think he's too sort of still, really. He just doesn't exude any kind of inspiration to me.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit at the weekend. I can't see why any of these players, these superstar players, the golden generation who are now on the way out, will ever be inspired by somebody like him. And even some of the younger guys who, you know, are now going to be
40 years younger.
Yeah, they're going to be given a chance to play for him. You know, Sturridge, Lallana, Barkley, Wilshere. I don't know why he's put Milner and Lampard in there, to be honest. I mean, I have no idea why he's doing that. But you'd think that here's a guy who is not going to change anything in the next 2 years for the Euros or in the next 6 years for the next World Cup.
I totally agree. And that headline you're writing tomorrow morning as well. Roy, we need 6 years to fix it. Hodgson admits he wasn't ready for pain. Roy Hodgson last night admitted he underestimated the demands of a World Cup. Well, that's a great endorsement to keep him on, isn't it? And claimed it could take up to 6 years to get the best out of this group of players. I mean, look, we had the discussion with Dance the other night, with Ian Dance, I should have said.
Yeah.
And
he's not very happy with you.
Well, I don't know why. Also, we were putting our point of view forward that we don't think it's good.
He wrote on his blog, by the way, that he said he was unfairly misrepresented by two of his colleagues on the TalkSport overnight show.
And who were they?
He calls us the two Mikes. He says we are friends and they are guys I have a lot of time for. But he says we ganged up on him, which is not true at all.
No, not at all. He was being interviewed by us, and it wasn't even an interview. It was a
well, he was very wound up about the fact that we were saying that maybe it was a good idea for Hodgson to move on.
Well, look, that's behind us now. Good old Dance has done a brilliant job over there. I think he'll be coming home with the England team. But just to say to you, Mike, because of course we're into Tuesday now, but yesterday, Monday, right, I mean, the level of opposition against Roy Hodgson continuing.
Yeah.
If I just look at some of the pieces out of yesterday's papers, first of all, Hodgson says, I won't quit. Hodgson is defiant despite Brazil fiasco, so people aren't happy about that. Lifting the lid on England's World Cup shame. Army of specialists had no impact on the team. They're now even saying whether Steve Peters should ever remain as part of the entourage because he had so little effect on the players.
Well, I mean, he came to kind of help them out with the penalty mechanism. He never actually got to a place where they were taking penalties.
Yeah, and some real experts having a go at England. Jamie Redknapp, are we now like Australia, just happy to join in? Criticisms of Greg Dyke, who's been accused by, football analysts of shooting from the hip because of that statement that Roy will stay on until 2016. Gary Lineker saying Roy to blame for humiliation. And then columnists like Martin Samley in the Daily Mail. England failed you, Stevie, talking about Stevie G. And the whole thing, to me, has just created, and we're not ganging up on Roy Hodgson, just created an atmosphere of can it go on. Now, why did you ask me earlier who I'll be supporting in the World Cup from now on?
Well, because from now on, obviously, we can enjoy the football, first of all. The most enjoyable games that I've seen have been involving teams other than England, right? And you've accused me in the past of not being an England supporter, and I always support England when they're playing. But you know what? Tonight against Costa Rica, part of me just wants Costa Rica to hammer them because Costa Rica plays some very attractive football.
Why
is it disgraceful? Costa Rica play very attractive football. They are the one team in that group everyone said everyone will beat this lot because they're no good. I've really enjoyed watching Ghana play. I've loved watching the USA play. The USA game the other night against Portugal was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic game. So I'm going to be supporting probably the USA, certainly Algeria, I think, as well.
USA?
Yeah, why not? I've got kids who live in America. Why shouldn't I support the USA? I'm not American, no, but England aren't in the tournament.
You told me you were going to support Belgium because you once went to the beer festival in Ostend.
You made that up. Absolute rubbish.
You told me.
I did go to a beer festival in Ostend, but that's not why I'm going to support Belgium.
And you told me last week you thought they were a great team.
I don't remember telling you that.
The surprise team. Well, you were clearly in drink. You were clearly drinking some of that Belgian beer, and you said that you thought they were worth a shout.
Well, I'd rather support Belgium than England, to be honest, because at least these people...
I don't support anybody who wants England.
So what are you going to do then? Just watch the games in a kind of miasmic state?
Yes.
Without caring who wins?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, I am.
Well, what's the point of that?
Well, because once England have gone out, I feel shame and humiliation about England's performance. The fact that they'll fly back on the plane tomorrow night, and then that plane will land at Luton Airport, it'll park in a corner of Luton Airport, and they'll come off the plane.
And they'll shuffle off into the darkness.
I remember when they came back from South Africa, and at least in South Africa, we got as far as the last 16, although we got hammered by Germany. But I remember the desolation of the team getting off the plane. It's going to be even worse this time. That flight home, by the way, I've been on one of those back from tournaments.
We're not even 2 weeks into the tournament, as you pointed out the other night. England were out of this tournament before Germany had played their second game. Yeah. I also saw a thing on Facebook the other day which said basically that if you bought your England shirt at the start of the World Cup, you're in luck because you can give it back now because it's still covered by the guarantee. You haven't had it long enough.
Terrible thing that people are making jokes like that. But no, I can't support anybody else, Mike. I mean, it would be fashionable now to jump on the old Brazil bandwagon and say, well, it's in Brazil.
I'd like to see Brazil winning it as well.
Well, look, for the people who are there, certainly if the England fans are staying on, I'd say, I hope for your sake it does, because it'd be a wonderful thing to tell your children years to come, I was in Brazil when Brazil won the World Cup. Yeah. What a fiesta of football that was.
It will be tremendous,
That was. But
and what about those people? I mean, all these guys who say, well, Hodgson's the answer, or he may not be the solution, but he's certainly not the problem, which is something that was said the other night by one of our colleagues. At the end of the day, lots of people have spent a fortune to go out and watch England play in Brazil, and I think they deserve better. And I don't think it's wrong to say that.
It was terribly poor, and I have to reiterate, and I'm going to keep saying this, I cannot see how Roy Hodgson can continue as England manager and give the country any credibility for two things. One, as a football nation, but two, as a nation who've learnt something from the failure of our World Cup campaign. If we don't ask Mr. Hodgson to step down, or he doesn't volunteer to step down, we've learnt absolutely nothing, and we're just going along the same route. The only reason, Mike, he's playing the young kids is because of the failure of Plan A. So, I mean, he's been forced to put Plan B into operation.
Yeah, but why, in the middle of all of that, does he then chuck Frank Lampard in just so that he can have a nice send-off? I mean, that is not right.
Because he's vice-captain, I assume. And if the number one captain, Stephen Gerrard's not playing, he's not there. Now, you also said to me, well, don't worry, if you're not interested in the football anymore, you can concentrate on Wimbledon. Wimbledon?
Yeah.
Wimbledon's the most boring sport in the world for the first week.
No, it isn't.
It is. It is. Nothing happens in Wimbledon in the first week.
Well, Andy Murray got through in the first round.
Oh, yeah, wow, brilliant. Yeah, get out the bunting and, that was a 20-1 shot, wasn't it? Let's all make a lot of money on these unexpected
Andy
things
Murray,
happening.
unfortunately for him, is now the only person in the world of sport who's carrying the hopes of any England fan or any Scotland fan or any Britain fan, because he's the only guy that's any good at anything.
Another headline for tomorrow morning, you're saying that Captain Alistair Cook suffered further humiliation at Headingley yesterday as England fell towards their first ever home Test series defeat by Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
What is the malaise about sport in this country at the moment? What's happening to this country? We're imploding sports-wise.
I'll tell you what's going on in
We
this
are
country,
becoming
right?
a bunch of dolts.
I'll tell you what's going on in this country. I was having this conversation as I was coming in a car this evening, right? And I said to the driver, who happens to be from, I think he's from Nigeria or another country in Africa, who'll forgive me for not knowing the exact one. I said, the problem with people in this country is they all think they're experts at everything. There's still this air from Roy Hodgson and the England camp that basically we are England. We invented football. We know everything about football in the same way that we know everything about how to govern other countries, in the same way that we know how to make everything, in the same way that we know how to kind of, advise everyone on how to do everything. And everybody here is a bloody expert. And unfortunately, England at this moment in time are no use at anything. Let's talk to John, who's an Arsenal fan, but we'll talk to him very, very shortly in a moment. This is TalkSport Extra Time, 08717 22 33 44. We are the two mics.
I wanted everyone to go home from this tournament, or at least as many as possible, having taken part and played in a game and not just taken part in training and being part of the group. We're very conscious of the fact that our fans are as disappointed and devastated as we are, but they're still here supporting us. We came into the hotel and received a lot of sympathy and kind words from them, and we really want to make certain that they see something tomorrow night that they can take some encouragement from. And most importantly of all, it's a top-class international football match played on the biggest stage of all, the World Cup. So anything else than taking the game very, very seriously in its own right and trying to win the game in its own right will be out of the question.
It's hard to believe that is the England manager.
Honestly, I'm just shocked that he says we came back to the hotel and received a lot of sympathy from fans. I mean, I don't want to hear an England manager talking like that.
No.
I want an England manager to hear about, after the game, we walked into the hotel to a rousing reception from the fans for a fantastic performance. Not simpering noises about sympathy. Yeah. My God, I'm sorry, but that has...
That's where we are.
That's made me feel worse.
And that is why England, under Roy Hodgson and under the current regime,
made me
will
feel
never
worse.
change at all. Let's talk to John, who's an Arsenal fan up in North London. 08717 22 3344. Morning, John. Hello, John, are you there?
I'm in total agreement with both of you. Roy Hodgson has to go.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah, what do you think about that, John? He says, we got a lot of sympathy from the fans when we got back to the hotel. This sounds like wimpishness. It sounds like weakness. It does not sound like the voice of a leader.
Well, let me ask you guys a question. You work at TalkSport, surrounded by football experts and ex-professionals, etc., etc. I'll ask this question to both of you. On the day that Fabio Capello went... Did either of you think yourselves, or did either of the any of the football experts at TalkSport come up to you and say, "Thank goodness that Capello's gone. Now we can get Roy Hodgson in"?
No, nobody actually said that. I don't think. But
anybody
Roy Hodgson,
think that?
But Roy Hodgson, well, everybody at the time thought Harry Redknapp was going to get the job, didn't
exactly,
they?
Which would have been a better idea.
I think people were so happy that Capello had gone that they were more or less willing to take anybody on at that point, because it was a ludicrous and crazy decision to make just a month or two before the Euro Championships that suddenly we're going to start with a new manager. This is why it makes no sense to me for those same people to say, obviously we have to keep him on for the long haul because it's only 2 months till the next campaign starts.
Well, the only person who's saying that publicly is Greg Dyke. And as we've already identified, even in this show this evening, Greg Dyke shoots from the hip. John, who would you want as the next England manager?
Oh, my goodness, there's so many. I mean, you could have Glenn Hoddle, you could have Tony Pulis, you could have Rafa Benitez.
Tony Pulis, not a bad idea. Quite like that idea. I want Gary Neville to be very much involved in the England setup. I think he's a remarkable young man. I think he's got fantastic powers of leadership. He's got a track record that everybody will respect. And I think he knows his own mind in a way that other managers who've not played at his level don't.
That's not a bad shout. But the thing that depresses me so much is Greg Dyke is basically saying that he believes it's impossible that at any time during the next 2 years that we can find a manager better than Roy Hodgson.
Well, I had a social media conversation with somebody a bit earlier on tonight who said, name me one international manager who's won anything. And I'm like, well, all you got to do, I'm looking for an international manager that's won a game in the World Cup, and all you got to do is look at the World Cup and pick any manager you like. Pick Algeria's manager. Pick, Jurgen Klinsmann, who a couple of people have already suggested, who's doing a great job in America. Costa Rica's manager, Mexico's manager, Argentina's manager. Take any international manager that you want, from Ghana even. Somebody who knows how to win at World Cups and knows how to win football matches and knows how to inspire the players, for heaven's sake, John.
And John, just look at Louis van Gaal. I mean, he's Manchester United's manager. His stock is rising by the minute, isn't it? As he powers through this World Cup.
Because he hasn't got a team of superstars, by the way, either.
No, he hasn't. Well, he's got Arjen Robben, and when he's got Robben...
He's got Robben and he's got Van Persie, but he's got an awful lot of... I mean, he was told, John, we've got to let you go. We've got a couple of other callers to take. There's loads of people who are playing for Holland who are not household names in this country.
Talking about one-man teams, Mike, one-man teams. What about Neymar at Brazil? Now, Brazil a one-man team with Neymar?
I wouldn't say they're a one-man team. I think that's a bit of a pedestrian way to describe them.
Talking about Neymar, have you ever seen Neymar and Danny Cipriani in the same room at the same time?
I haven't, no.
They look
what
very
are you suggesting?
Similar. Well,
you think so?
Well, yeah, I think they look very similar. Yeah, I think they look very similar. I think Neymar is slightly better looking because I think Danny Cipriani is one of the ugliest sportsmen I've ever seen.
Women like him. He's a very good-looking guy.
Well, I just don't get this. I just do not get this. I mean, maybe it's because I'm male and I have no appreciation of the male form.
Maybe
but that Kelly Brook, who's one of the world's most beautiful women in my view, why on earth she'd even glance at that bloke twice now because of the way that
you think she'd rather go with a short, balding, bearded, fat Welshman?
What is the point of your ridiculous sort of intended insult? I'm not suggesting for a moment that she would want to associate with myself at my age. Mind you, 25 years ago, I'm telling you, I was a very tasty product. But all I was going to say is, I just don't see it with Cipriani at all. To me, he's an
international rugby star.
He's got what I call a pan face type look. It's like he's walking along and suddenly somebody gets a flat bottom pan, they swing it, smash him right in the face, and his face becomes sort of flattened, if you see what I mean.
Well, that's coming from playing international rugby.
Well, maybe it is. But I noticed tonight with Neymar the remarkable resemblance to Danny Cipriani. But I'm not suggesting Neymar's a pan face. I mean, I think he's a attractive looking guy. I can see that in him. But also, if Brazil are relying on him to the extent they are, let's hope nothing happens to him for Brazil's sake. If they want to win the cup on their own territory.
Yeah. Well, I don't agree with the fact that the Neymar looks anything like it. But anyway, let's talk to a different Danny, who's a Spurs fan in London. Hi, Danny.
Hello, mate. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, very well. But can you talk some sense into Porky here, please?
I don't know if that's possible, mate, is it? But I just about Roy Hodgson. I mean, can either of you give me one reason, just one, why he should be found on as England manager?
I can't give you one.
None whatsoever.
I suppose the only one you could say is that it might cost England about £6 million to give him the boot.
No, I don't even agree with that. If he's an honourable man, Roy Hodgson, frankly, I think he should have stood down by now, because I think when you bring back that sort of record from a major tournament where hopes were high, I would honestly say that it belongs on him. The other thing is, Danny, as well, how old is Roy Hodgson? Is he 66
or 7, isn't he?
67 or something like that. And now he's blooding young boys who are maybe 45 years younger than him. I mean, that's quite remarkable. I can't see the relationship between those two categories of people.
Right.
An international manager who's never won anything and a young aspiring star like Ross Barkley.
But Danny, what about the fact that as well as Roy Hodgson having to go, I mean, you look back at all the other managers, Capello, Sven-Göran Eriksson, and whoever else you've had all the way through the years, the players have all underperformed for all of them.
Mike, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, it's the type of manager and excuse me, but the type of person that we're employing as England manager. If you look back, like you just said, you've had Hodgson, Steve McLaren, Eriksson, Capello, before him Graham Taylor. They're all that same type of dowdy, it's a boring style of football. The only two we've had success under will be Bobby Robson and Terry Venables. And, it's about character in that level. You haven't got to coach the players. You've got to create the right atmosphere. And Harry Redknapp, is nailed on. He's the only man to take us forward where we need to be. And I truly believe that. I truly believe it's the type of character that Hodgson is. It just, every tournament we go in, we die with a whimper. I don't think we play well. Everyone's saying we play well in defence. I don't think we did.
Yeah, I don't agree either. I mean, but definition of playing well does not include losing, as far as I'm concerned.
No, and a definition of playing well, Danny, is also that you take your best players to a World Cup tournament. And he didn't. He didn't take Ashley Cole. Major error.
well.
Major error, and he's been hung by his own petard. This petard
or even hoisted.
Hoisted.
No, not hoisted.
He's been hoisted by his own petard. This bold decision. Look at me. I'm big enough an international manager to leave out Ashley Cole, probably the best left back in the world for the last 6 or 7 years. But that's me because I'm a genius. Well, such a genius that we'd be lucky to come back with a point.
But don't you think as well, Mike? Even looking at the formation that he's played, he's played Danny Welbeck wide left. He's not even a good centre forward, let alone a good left winger. Yeah. He's played Sterling in the middle.
We've been over all this ground. We've known
he has. The thing is, though, Mike, and Danny quite rightly says, a lot of England fans are still very perturbed about this. He played almost everybody out of every position.
Yes.
Listen to this. Hi, boys. This is Jeff. Just got in after my shift on the cabs. I'm sat here. The wife and kids are in bed. I've got a chocolate brown Labrador, and the problem with Roy Hodgson is he couldn't inspire my dog. He's dreary, and I don't know what he's won as a player, but as a manager, he's won nothing. And I think that says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, chocolate brown Labradors, lovely dogs.
They are.
But they eat too much.
I'll tell you what, my dog, you've never seen the size of my dog.
Is yours
now.
a Labrador?
Yeah, it's a yellow Labrador, right? But it's a puppy, and it's now the size of a massive, full-grown Labrador
they eat
at 5
anything.
months.
They eat anything.
Yeah.
We used to have a chap
fishing net the other day.
A fishing net?
Yeah.
That's bad news. We had a chap here who was visually impaired, so he had a Labrador guide dog. Beautiful dog.
Chip?
No, it was before Chip.
Before
it was Brandy.
Chip. Oh, right.
And,
was that the one that threw up on Alan Sugar's legs?
I'm afraid it did, yeah. And that's because I used to overfeed it. But I thought it was looking...
You overfed? So it was your fault?
Well, it was my fault.
What did you feed him?
Well, I used to go to Tesco's and they have a dog section.
Right.
And I used to buy all these all these lovely dog things that he liked. You know what I mean? He used to eat them all the time. But I didn't realise that actually, if you give a Labrador 6 bowls of food, he'll eat every bowl of food.
Exactly.
They just never stop eating.
That's right.
So I hope that... you see, I think you do it out of guilt. I think because you know that you're excessive in weight, you want your dog to be excessive in weight. I do.
I think
you want a fat dog.
It's got nothing to do with me.
I think you want a fat dog.
I don't want a fat dog.
So that you don't get embarrassed when you take him out and walk him. And people look at him and think, oh, that's a lean dog. Look at that lean dog with that fat guy who's the owner.
I want a fat co-presenter is what I want. And I've got one, luckily enough. Let's talk to Daryl, who's a Liverpool fan in London. Hi, Daryl.
How are you, Mike? You all right?
Yeah, very well, mate. What would you like to say?
Oh, great show, lads, by the way. Love it every night. Just about, we're all going on about Roy and stuff, how poor he is, but who would you have,
Well, we just said you can have any manager from the World Cup who's actually won a game, or
I want an English manager.
Or if you want an English manager, you could have Harry Redknapp, you could have Glenn Hoddle, you could have
Tony
Neville.
Pulis. I like the Tony Pulis show.
That's 5 already.
I don't know about Tony, to be honest. Harry was really nailed on.
I still have Harry.
He was the guy, but it's probably not going to happen. But who was the last England manager who actually inspired confidence for me? For me, it was Terry Venables or
Glenn
Hoddle. Well, hang on.
Glenn Hoddle, to an extent, Glenn, But
I'm a big fan of I'm a big fan of Terry Venables, and I know him well and worked with him, but. Terry had the opportunity to give us the Euro Championships in '96 on home ground.
But that was the last time I enjoyed watching England play, though.
I
totally agree.
That was probably part of the question as well.
And that would have been a turning
game
point.
Against Euro '96 was it's like England played proper football, if you know what I mean.
Well, we played Holland, didn't we? Beaten 4-1.
We did, 4-1.
Teddy Sheringham scored 2 goals. But what I'm saying is that could have been a turning point. You see, if we'd got through that penalty shootout, we'd have played Czechoslovakia in the final,
exactly,
and they would have been beatable.
Yeah.
And that would have turned English football around for 20 years. If you see what I mean.
It would. But actually, getting to the semi-final was brilliant. Anyway, it was such a brilliant tournament, wasn't it?
It was amazing.
Do you know what? There weren't many clubs. There weren't many teams in that tournament. There's only 16 teams in that tournament.
Exactly. Gaza was an inch away from securing.
Yeah, he just lost a yard of pace. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
No, listen. I mean, this conversation I'm sure will go on for a long time. Costa Rica are playing tonight. I'm saying it's time to support another team. You're saying, and a few people are supporting you with your view that you shouldn't support any other team once England have been knocked out. This guy Adam says, I don't support any other club once my team are knocked out of the FA Cup.
Exactly.
Well, that's different. The FA Cup is not the World Cup, is it? I mean, you can't. There's another 2 weeks of the World Cup to go. All the games are live here on TalkSport.
Where would
Surely
you
it's
find...
more interesting if you actually support a particular team.
No, where would you find the inspiration to say, I've got to rush home tonight to make sure that Costa Rica win? I mean, it's nonsense. It's utter garbage.
Thomas says this,
and it shows your, flibbity-gibbety mind. That's what I'm saying.
Flibbity-gibbety, is that a technical term?
It is. Yeah, it is. You have a flibbity-gibbety mind. Never focus on anything.
Now, Thomas says Porky says that he wants an Englishman as a manager. He then says he wants Tony Pulis.
Yeah,
Do you know
he's a
where
Welshman.
Tony Pulis is?
Yeah, of course, I know Tony Pulis is a
Welsh.
Welshman, but he's adopted English because he's been.
You said Jurgen Klinsmann was adopted English the other day.
No, I said he's adopted American.
You said he's an American, adopted American English.
I meant English speaking.
Really?
He's an adopted English speaking American. That's what I'm saying.
But he's German, actually.
I know he's German, you fool, because he played for Germany, didn't he? And
He also played for Tottenham.
And he also managed Germany. And when we went to the World Cup in 2006 in Germany, so don't start telling your grandmother how to make biscuits. Okay?
Suck eggs, I think is the phrase you're looking for.
That's what I was looking
Dave
for,
says this, never mind the next England manager. If Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard retire, who's going to be the next captain? Well, we talked about this the other night as well. And Wayne Rooney wants to be captain? Absolutely not.
Wayne Rooney's got to be the captain.
And finally, one from John who says, Cipriani looks like Neymar. What is this lunatic on? That's the funniest thing I've ever heard.
They look very similar.
And here's one for you to finish off with, all right? Because after your ridiculous attack on me a little bit earlier on, this guy says, Owen says this at IROMG, with friends like Mike Parry, you don't need enemies. He cannot pass up a chance to smear you and throw you under the bus.
It's not easy. It's not difficult to smear old MG. Believe me, people out there, this man's character. I mean, he's riddled.
That's not an opportunity for you to have another go, by the way.
It is riddled with filth and distemper and that sort of thing. It really is.
Really?
If you knew it inside out. I've known this man since the early 80s. Believe me, I could write a book about him, but I'm not going to.
If you could remember any of it.
No, in the interests of decency and fair play, because I am a fair-minded man, I'm saying nothing more.